Welcome back to the Exploring Growth podcast with myself, Lee Murray. I have Dan Tyre here today from HubSpot. If you don't know who he is, you're about to find out. This is an amazing episode. Hey, Dan.
Lee.
How are you?
I am off the charts great. How about you?
That's awesome. Me too. I'm just coming off a bout of COVID, but I'm glad to be back.
Nice. It's good to have you healthy, right? And I can bring the big energy to this podcast, right?
The non-COVID energy.
All right, tell everybody to turn it down to 3 because I'm going to be jumping up and down. I'm going to be screaming. Right. I'm going to be yelling. I skew, pretty excitable boy, right? And I love doing podcasts with people who talk about a growth mindset. Does anybody not need a growth mindset in 2022? Oh, my goodness.
That's the premise of my being at this point, you know?
I know. That's your reputation.
That's my whole reputation.
That's what Todd said. The nice beard.
That's right.
Right? A righteous dude. I think that's what he said. That could be a Todd Hockenberry quote. And he's like, you should do this podcast. I'm like, why? He's like, it's all about a growth mindset. I'm like, I'm in.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, and you're booked. Easy. It was easy.
Exactly. It's because I like to talk. It's because I like to help people. My mission statement is to do the most good for the universe. And I like doing podcasts. Very, very helpful and effective. And doing the best that we can to help everybody in the 21st century.
That's awesome. Yeah. And just for background, as he's mentioning, Todd Hockenberry is another person I've had on, a very knowledgeable expert marketing consultant. I've had him on before and he introduced us. Yeah, there's his book. That's Todd's book. Great book, by the way. He had him on. He introduced me to Dan and we're off to the races.
I co-authored this book with Todd. My name is.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's why. Todd is the best co-author in the history of books. He is an amazing person. And it took us a year and a half to write the book. We didn't have one argument. It was amazing.
Wow. That's impressive.
It is. I'm conflict oriented. I fight with everybody except Todd. First of all, Todd is thoughtful and kind, right? Second of all, he's super smart. He's got 3 patents in lasers, right? Third of all, he's focused on helping people as well. And for industrial companies, there's no one better in helping them grow. So I'm a huge fan. I just told him that. He was feeling a little down. I'm like, don't feel down, right? You're adding tremendous value and we'll continue to do that. And that's what it's important.
Always good reminder. Yeah,
exactly.
So, hey, as we're jumping into this, just briefly for those people, because a lot of this is going to be, dispersed on LinkedIn. Some people don't know who you are. Give us a quick, brief, introduction to Dan Tyre.
Sure. My name is Dan Tyre. I live primary residence in Paradise Valley, Arizona. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. You should connect with me on all forms of social media. Yeah. LinkedIn, Dan Tyre, executive at HubSpot. If you want to connect with me on Twitter, at Dan Tyre. If you want to connect with me on Instagram, DTyre1, so you can see pictures of my food. Right. Nice. And I've had a storied career. First of all, I've been married to the beautiful Amy Tyre for 33 years. Right?
Awesome. Congrats.
She's the smart Tyre. You should have Amy on this podcast, right? I'm all the big energy. She actually thinks things through. Amazing.
She balances you out.
And she does all the work, like most relationships, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm essentially an ATM, a pack mule, and an Uber driver. And she does all the thinking, planning. If we're a great mom, the only she's a great traveler. She's a little funnier than I am, which is a little bit of a problem for my male ego. But other than that,
I could see it. Yeah.
Grown together, love being married to her, love hanging out with her. We were just in Honduras last week. Right?
Oh, awesome.
For speaking engagement was pretty cool. So I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I have 2 grown kids. Eli's 27, Sally's 24. Very socially responsible, which is the influence that my wife had. And over the last 42 years, I've done 5 startups, right?
Okay.
I've got some weirdness going on. I live in a purple house. I'm a bass player. You know any bass players, Lee?
I do know 2. Yes.
Okay, and I bet you they're weird.
They are.
So
one's an engineer.
Yeah, it aligns perfectly. If I ever write a second book, I'm going to talk about the benefit of being a bass player as an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Lead singers and guitar players, they're all about the limelight. They're all about ego. Bass players don't care about that.
No,
right?
you're there just keeping the rhythm. You're trying to keep people going and laying the foundation, the structure.
That's what I've been doing for the last 42 years.
That's
100%.
awesome.
Exactly right. That's perfect. I went to Colgate University. I graduated in 1980, which most of your listeners are like, wow, he's an old guy. And then it was super fun. I was a bass player in a heavy metal rock and roll band when I graduated and played around for about a year. And then went to work for a computer reseller in Boston. Right. And it could have been the worst run company in the world. They had an exclusive to sell Apple computer east of the Mississippi, and they found a way to screw that up. It's called a
Wow.
computer store. And I learned a lot from seeing what they did and saying, I am never going to do that. Unmotivated employees, inventory problems,
It's a great
lack
way to
of
start out.
planning. It was awesome. Anyway, my boss was this guy, Roger. And Roger was from the Midwest, and he was a good guy. He gave me my first shot. He comes in after a year, and he's like, I'm leaving. I'm like, why? He's like, I'm going to a startup. I'm like, what's a startup? He's like, it's a small company that's going to grow quickly. I'm like, all right, have a good time. He's like, no, I want to take you with me. I'm like, I got a job. He's like, I'll give you $100 more a month. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a startup guy. So I quit my job and went with Roger. And it was just dumb luck, right? No one ever talked about startups back in 1982.
No, they weren't sexy.
Right? Yeah, they didn't really exist. Back in the old days, it cost millions of dollars to start a company. You had to plan and do a 50-page business model, right? Only very, very wealthy folks and businesses started other businesses, right? Anyway, this company went from $2 million when I joined to $1.4 billion.
Oh, wow.
Over 9 years. And that's when $1 billion was real money. And it was amazing. Right. I started as a salesperson in Boston, went to Framingham and ran a location, then moved to general management, went to LA, San Francisco, and New York. Right. And I got an unbelievable MBA in how to work with people, how to scale businesses, how to grow very, very quickly. And it was amazing education. I learned so much. Oh, my goodness. And they were paying me to do it.
I can imagine.
And I learned the keys to scale, some of which we're going to talk about today. My second startup, I founded myself. After 9 years at Businessland, the name of that company, I decided, all right, I want to see if this is something that I could do myself. Can I be a founder?
The name of the company was Businessland?
Yeah, Businessland. That was the name of it.
That sounds like a Monopoly board, like a game.
I know. You'll see as I go through this that I have historically been associated with the worst named companies right, in the history of American business. It's like horrible. Businessland. Everybody's like, what is that? Like a executive park for?
Yeah, it's like a failed executive theme park.
I know.
The story behind
back in the 1980s, there was a company by the name of Computerland. Did you ever hear of Computerland?
No.
Computerland, MicroAge. They were computer resellers. Mark Cuban started with a computer reseller back in 1982 and saw the growth of computers. Anyway, Businessland was company owned, and they're like, okay, we're all about business, so we're going to be Businessland. I'm like, that's the dopiest thing I've ever heard. I can't work for a company by the name of Businessland, but I did for 10 years.
Yeah, and that's awesome.
The symbol was BUSL. While he was there, the company grew explosively. The founders were Dave Norman, who was a great guy, Enzo Teresi, who was a smart guy, right? And started in San Jose, so right on Stevens Creek Boulevard. And I worked all over the United States for this company, and I couldn't believe they kept promoting me. It was amazing, and it was a great ride, and I learned a ton. Then I'm like, no, I think I could do this better, which is like, probably not right, and hubris. So I quit and I started my own company in Needham, Massachusetts. This one was called Automated Labor Incorporated. And what do you think of that name?
I mean, you're getting better, but it's still lacking.
Yeah, it's
not really easily brandable.
Yeah, you're just being nicely, right? It was horrible. People are like, are you a temp firm? Are you a robotics firm? What is automated labor?
What are you?
That's what everybody wants. And they're like, no, that's stupid. In fact, about 8 years later, after I sold the company, I was in an audience of a guy presenting branding, and he put up automated labor as one of the worst examples of company names ever. And I'm like, yep. Okay. Like I'm kind of embarrassed.
But I mean, hey, you grew a company with the horrible name. I mean, what better rapport could you have? I mean,
all right. The one after a year, I changed it to ALI Technologies. right?
Okay,
Because I
much
got
better.
tired of explaining how I'm an idiot when it comes to naming companies. And
Right.
ALI was great because it started with A, so it's the top of all lists, and
Yep.
everybody
Yep.
could remember it.
That's
And
right.
I owned ALI.com, which is a funny story around that as well.
Okay.
But I was with that company for 9 years. Same thing. I had a location. World headquarters was in Needham, Massachusetts. Had a location on Wall Street, and we doubled in size every year. And it turns out it was a consulting and software company around collaboration technology. It was in the early days of the growth of the web.
Okay.
It was super exciting. We worked around Lotus Notes. We had a training division.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And in 1997, somebody from Phoenix said, all right, we want to buy you. And I'm like, okay. So we negotiated a price, and 8 weeks before we were going to consummate the deal, they were like, there's one other thing. I'm like, what? They're like, you got to move to Phoenix. I'm like, I'm not moving to Phoenix. They're like, we won't do the deal.
Wow.
And they did something very smart. They recruited me in December. And have you ever been in Boston in December?
I have not been in Boston in December. I have been in the nice months.
Okay. Boston in December is the tundra, right?
Yeah.
It's like 3 feet of snow. It's amazing.
No one ever talks about it.
I know. That's because they're too discouraged. When I got to Phoenix, there's like palm trees and wearing a sweatshirt. I'm like, maybe I could stay here for a year. I've been here for 24 years.
Wow.
Right. In that time, Phoenix has changed a lot. Anyway, I was on the board of directors of that company. I ran sales and professional services. It was super fun. Company scaled very, very quickly, $30-40 million. And then I bought their training division and ran their training division highly successfully for 2 years. And then when 9/11 hit, I had to put the company into bankruptcy, right? Which was hard. Here I am, a hard-charging like executive with 2 successful wins. And now, right?
Because that's super difficult.
It was. But I learned how to do it. My beautiful wife supported me the whole time. She's like, we'll get through this.
She's a keeper. She's a keeper.
I know. And she was right, as she always is. Yeah. And I learned how to do it. And I've helped dozens of folks
kind of navigate
that process by themselves. And then I went to work for a company called Groove Networks out of Boston. And after 5 years, they got bought by Microsoft. Lucky me, right? It was my 4th startup. It was very interesting technology. I covered a territory from Los Angeles to Arkansas.
Okay.
And it was like super fun. 128-bit collaborative technology, peer-to-peer, right? Invented by this guy, Ray Ozzie, who was also the inventor of Lotus Notes, and just brilliant and a good business person and lots of fun. Anyway, my boss there was this guy, Brian Halligan. And when Microsoft bought Groove, he went to MIT. I worked for Microsoft for a year, and they started HubSpot. Darbesh and Brian started HubSpot. So they 2006 they called me and they said, we want you to be one of the startup team members. I'm like, why me? They're like, you're a great startup guy. You got a lot of energy. You know how to sell. Our software isn't that good. So
and we actually have a name that could be branded and could actually be used. I mean, this is,
I know.
It
got me out of the quagmire of poorly named companies, right? Because HubSpot, most people, in the early days, people like StubHub. And I'm like, no. Hub, like what? And we got our own little sprocket, which is designed by Dharmesh's wife. And we've got an orange logo, which people kind of like. Especially those weasels over at Orange Theory.
Oh my gosh. But every time I see Orange Theory on the back of someone's car, I think HubSpot. So, I mean, there's something good happening there.
Yeah. John Kelleher is our chief legal officer. And for 4 years in a row, I brought it up to him and said, you got to stop this. And he's like, Dan, no one is going to confuse Jim with a software company. Just leave it alone. And then he's right. John Kelleher.
The first time I saw it on a car, I was like, they're going offline now? Are they like building communities? And what's going on here? Had the people put this on their car?
Amazing. Anyway, I'm employee number 6 at HubSpot. I've been there for 15 years, still full-time employed there. My first 14 years, I was in sales.
Okay.
I proudly worked for a variety of great VPs of sales. Mark Roberge took us from 0 to $100 million in 7 years. Amazing.
That is amazing.
In 7 years. Is first of all, like the smartest guy in the world.
It's really the textbook.
Second of all, he wrote the book called The Sales Acceleration Formula, which
amazing.
everybody.
It's amazing.
And it's because he's not a vice president of sales; he's a scientist, right? He was an engineering
Yeah.
background, and he applied engineering techniques to
Mhm.
the sales organization. And like after the first 90 days, I'm like, this guy's too smart, right? I don't even have to think.
Mhm.
I'm just going to do whatever Mark tells me to
Mhm.
do. And that turned out to be pretty good. So Heidi Carlson and Pete Caputa and Mark Roberge and I helped scale HubSpot in 2007. And I did like lots of jobs in the early days, right? I moved to management. I was the first sales director. I ran the international division. I did sales recruiting. There was a lot of things that I had my fingers in. And I always tell everybody, everything changed in 2007. The way we scale companies, everything went out the window in 2007 because the addition of SaaS software, the SaaS revolution, and the scalable way that you could then see applications so that you could track statistics. It became more of a process,
Right.
HubSpot had great innovation. We essentially invented the inbound process, inbound marketing, inbound sales, the inbound flywheel. And it was so much fun, right? Because it was innovative and we could provide a competitive advantage for our clients. And so I did it for a long time, worked in a lot of different areas, met a ton of great folks. And now, I don't know, 15 years later, HubSpot is now a publicly traded company, 6,000 employees, 120 countries sold, software sold in 120 countries worldwide. And we have, I think 1.7, no, 1.6. Oh no, it's 143,000 paying customers, right?
Wow.
Which shows that we've worked very, very hard.
Yeah.
In the old days, it was inbound marketing.
Yep.
Right now, it's inbound like flywheel. It's a front office with sales, service, and support, sales, service, and marketing. And it's a great way to scale a company.
And you're mainly in the mid-market and enterprise, or you have a product for the small company too, right?
All the way up, right? When we started, we were primarily SMB,
Yeah.
right? But we then branched out to mid-market, now solidly in the corporate area. And it's a barbell strategy where we'll work with somebody that's a solo entrepreneur all the way to a company of 2,000 employees.
Yeah. You know, what was most impressive to me, and when I think about HubSpot, is talking about that sales scale up from 0 to 100 million. That to me was equally, if not more impressive than the actual product itself, even though the product is, A plus, just because it's like, that is the case study for how to scale a company.
I think that's right. It was at the time. Now it's a little bit different. It pivoted again in 2017,
Sure.
And then it pivoted again in 2020, right? Based on the global pandemic and digital first, right? But HubSpot was always innovative, had access to capital.
Yes.
The big thing with HubSpot is they always put people first, right? And the reason I'm still with HubSpot after 15 years is now I work in marketing, right? Which is a little bit weird for me, right? I work for this lady, Courtney Sembler, who's amazing, right? And I work for HubSpot Academy, which is amazing. If your listeners don't know HubSpot Academy, just Google it.
Okay.
Right. HubSpot Academy offers 400 courses, sales, marketing, entrepreneurship, variety of different hard and soft skills for free.
Which makes total sense. It makes total sense that that's the way you guys would go based on where I saw you come from. Because, I mean, back in the early days, you guys were doing stuff that all these other companies are now only doing, like Salesforce and these other type of companies, where you'd have employees in front of a camera, almost 24 hours a day, delivering just high value content out to agencies. I was, part of HubSpot as from the agency side way back. And so I got to, experience that side of it. And it was impressive to me.
Yeah. Dharmesh Shah is the Dalai Lama of HubSpot, and he always had a big heart. And he created the culture code. Both Brian and Dharmesh wanted to create a lasting company and started from the top. Right. And I played a very small role in that. I wasn't a senior executive. I was an individual contributor, manager, and director, and have continued to do that because of the impact that it makes. Our mission today, HubSpot is a mission-driven organization to help millions of individuals and companies grow better. Who didn't want to do that?
Okay, there you go.
Oh, my goodness.
There you go. I was going to ask you about the Grow Better hashtag on LinkedIn. Because I saw you posting with that a lot. Is that where that comes from? Is it attached to the
Yeah.
academy?
Yeah. Most of the intelligent things that I say, I clip right from the smart people who think it through at HubSpot. And it's really been amazing, right? Because HubSpot is always bigger than HubSpot, right? They started with the inbound process, right? And as you know, I wrote a book, Inbound Organization, which is everything I learned because everything was different.
Yeah.
Right. When you go from 0 to $100 million in 7 years, which I had rarely seen before, right? Like that is a different model.
Yes.
And now you see companies growing even more quickly.
Yes.
Right. Because they're leaning into the SaaS revolution. They're understanding which metrics to focus on. They're more visible, and they're leveraging what we call the inbound flywheel, which is to attract, engage, and delight folks, right? So that they grow virally, which applies to Exploring a Growth Mindset podcast as well, because that's part of the things that we recommend people do is to lean into digital first. It's the most scalable way.
It is.
Right? Rather than like spending a lot of time and effort going out and engaging customers. Let the customers come to you, right? Starts with your website. Have your CRM connected directly to your website, right? When we're talking about the HubSpot competitive advantage, right? If somebody can drop their information on your website, go directly into your CRM, have an indication of somebody either in marketing or sales to follow up automatically. Now, all of a sudden, you're automating the low content work, which greatly accelerates your ability to find the right good fit customer, engage them in a way in which they understand that you're interested in people. And then if they're ready to go, sign them on as a customer and make sure that they stick around so that you can get other customers.
Most definitely. You know, on the content side, it makes sense to create valuable content, obviously, but I'm more intrigued with the distribution side. You know, once you have the valuable content, you need to distribute it so you can get the feedback. And then that cycle there, I mean, it's much more nuanced than that, but that cycle is how you actually learn more about your customers or your audience and can feed them more of what they want.
Yeah, it's amazing. In 2007, I invented the term schmarketing. Have you ever heard of schmarketing?
I have, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I invented that. I was getting drunk with Mike Volpe, our CMO at the time, and I'm like, we just started getting inbound leads. It was like August of 2007. And inbound leads were amazing. Before August, I had a cold call. I cold call for HubSpot. Don't tell anybody. And I would like call people up and just out of the blue, I would try to do a little bit of research, but like being online was the same before. I would explain the value proposition, and I got about the same response, right, as you would expect, right? 5% of the people were interested, and I would work that like sales funnel. Sales funnel doesn't work anymore, right? You have to get people to come to you with a flywheel. And the best way to do that is to publish product or content in our freemium product, right? Have them come find you by optimizing it. And you're 100% right. Back in 2007, there were not a lot of people doing it. Now there are hundreds of thousands of people who are using the inbound methodology as a way of differentiating and working through this process. So it's much more competitive as before. It's hard, right? There's a lot of work that you got to do, right? But one of the foundations is that now in 2022, every company is a tech company. Right. That's a direct Dan Tyre quote. It used to be, you could say, I'm a nonprofit. We don't really lean into tech. Now you can't do it. There's an expectation. Everybody has a working website. Everybody has chat on their website. Everybody gets a response on our, and if you're using like a complex tech stack, that becomes more difficult to manage. If you're using a streamlined tech stack where you get all that information, you could look at all the data, you can understand what your customers are looking for, then you could greatly accelerate the process.
That's right.
If you do that with people first, right, remembering that the 6 keys to inbound is number 1, treat people like human beings. You'd think we wouldn't have to remind people that. You definitely.
That's why I'm glad it's number 1.
Exactly. Number 2 is help, not sell. Do you like when people help you?
Oh, of course.
Why?
I mean, because it helps me. It helps me get to the end goal of what I'm trying to, or it solves a need for me that I have right now so I can move on to something else.
Sounds like it turns out you're like everybody else. People love it. Sometimes they think it's weird. I'm like, no, I'm just here to help.
Yeah, no.
They're like, help with what? I'm like, depends. What do you need help with? And they're like, Okay, you called me,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, based on the research that I saw, looks like you could use some help in generating new customers or competitive advantage or understanding productivity of your sales and marketing team or alignment internally or better statistics, or you need more leads or more quality leads or a client engagement, right? In
They need one of those.
2022, exactly. Or competitive advantage. You want a competitive, they all say, I want an unfair advantage. I'm like, okay, well, I'll give you a competitive advantage and you could take it wherever you want. But number one, treat people like human beings. Number two, help, not sell. Number three, customer experience is your only competitive advantage, right? And it used to be people would buy something, they would buy a computer or a car or whatever because it had a special feature that no one else had. Today, with the rate of development, right? If we don't have a feature, we'll have it in 6 months. Same thing with our competitors. So the only thing you can lean on, the only sustainable competitive advantage is customer experience. And just like you said, Lee, that is hard, right? Because you have to provide the right information to the right person at the right time, right? And when I go to people's website, I frequently see get a demo. Right? Or download a product brochure or something like that, which is not very welcome. You're asking people to get married on the first date, right? What I'd like to see is a checklist of how to use Riverside the first time as a public speaker.
That's right.
Or how to stay focused when you're doing a podcast on exploring growth or something specific. And if I see that, I'm like, ooh,
that's right. That's helping.
Right. And some of that is free. Then some of it is behind a call to action and a landing page. Then I drop my contact information. And then I want you to engage with me based on where I'm at. And that's the sales and marketing alignment. In the old days, it was all sales, right? We got all the leads. We called all the leads and we put people through a funnel. That doesn't work anymore. Now, right, marketing and sales have to work in alignment. So sales doesn't get all the leads. When sales calls, they have to call with help.
That's right.
Right. And they establish the relationship. It's a little different for different industries, but that's part of the inbound leadership principles and a philosophy. Then you want to make sure that you're focused, because focus beats bandwidth. The riches are in the niches. Have you ever heard that?
I have.
Okay. Or if you're in the UK, if you want to go to the beaches, you've got to work the niches.
And right? it is everything right now, and it's getting even more so. Let me tell you a quick story. So I have a 13-year-old son, and he plays all these different video games, and one of them is it's not Farmville, but it's something like that. It's got the Crossy Road stuff. I can't think of the name, but it's this 24-hour cycle where you build a farm and you pull weeds and you plant stuff and you do different things. Well, he was telling me the other day that just about how the game worked. And he said that he wanted to start a YouTube channel and talk about, show video of him playing this game because he saw this other YouTuber doing it. And she has an entire YouTube following, which is rather large, of people watching her do one thing in this game. And it has to do with frogs. So she's basically, just talking about the frog character inside of this game for hours and hours and hours and hours on end on YouTube and on Twitch. And she has hundreds of thousands of subscribers and followers. That's where we are today with in terms of niche, and people care about that and they want to follow that and they want to buy merch. They're buying t-shirts with her logo on it. I think that's amazing. I mean, I think it's amazing because people can actually create on a level like that, but to the small to mid-size market, it's the same way. Even if we're B2B, we have to think about it that way.
Great example. So it's hard for an entrepreneur to turn down business, but there's 3 reasons you do it. Number one, you want to focus on the place you do your best work.
Yes.
Right? You'll typically have good customer references there, right? You understand that business. And like if you use Todd Hockenberry's example, he's got 3 patents for lasers. So when you walk in and talk to him, in the first 30 seconds, he's an industrial guy. He's a manufacturing guy. He just knows it.
He knows it.
Right?
Yeah.
Number 2, they'll stick around longer because that's what you focus on. Right. If you're into frogs, right, and you want more information on frogs, you'll come back every week.
Right.
Right. Finally, and this is lost on some SMBs, you'll actually grow more quickly. If you can niche as narrow as possible, right, it will allow you to grow more quickly. Because if you're a guy who wants frogs, you'll Google it. You'll have the SEO. It'll come up quickly. Right. You'll see that she has domination there. Exactly.
Yeah.
And as long as you have, I don't know, I had one customer who had 6 prospects, 6, that's it. And I'm like, that's kind of small. He's like,
It's
no,
kind of
if I get
amazing.
one a year, right? I did a telco show in 2019, and there was a lady there who wanted to meet me and get a book signed. And her focus was telco companies in California, Arizona, and Utah, right? That at least had, I think it was $30 million. And she said, there's 28 people like that. They all want to work with me, right? Because they know that's what I
That's right.
focused on. I'm like, aren't they concerned about confidentiality or conflict? And they're like, no,
Yeah.
they know that I know this business as well as they do.
Yes.
They know that I can deliver for them. So that focus over bandwidth is very
You
important.
know,
And then the sixth part of
let me say
the
one
inbound
thing.
process.
Let me say one thing in that.
Okay.
I read a quote from a book a couple of years ago that stuck with me, and that was, to be an expert means knowing more and more about less and less. You
Wow.
know,
I
I
like that.
mean, that what you're talking about, the example of the 6 prospects is that, right? I mean, and I think about that in my business all the time. And we're talking about marketing, and we're talking about digital marketing. We're talking about Facebook. We're talking about Facebook ads. You know, you can, as a consultant or as an advisor or as an expert, or even a company that's selling a product, the more niche you can go, you're right. You're going to solve problems quicker because that long tail credibility is there.
There's so many advantages. Number one, it doesn't stress out your team. Number two, you're doing the same thing over and over again. By definition, you should get
Mhm.
better at it. Number three, you build that reputation. Number four, right? If Todd Hockenberry says, no, do Lee's podcast, I'm like, I'm not going to question
Yeah, that's
that,
right.
right? I'm like the reason I was a easy sale is because Todd told me to
That's
do
right.
it. So you leverage Todd's
Mhm.
credibility, right, to connect. And then boom, here we
That's
are.
right.
And so the final thing, the sixth foundation of the inbound organization, the book I wrote with Todd, is look at the data, right? And once again, that is another HubSpot competitive advantage, because if you don't have the
That's
data
right.
of your ideal customer profile, of your personas, of how people are
Mhm.
finding you, of the channels, of the
Mhm.
information, if you do, then you can tweak and optimize.
Mhm.
If you don't, and you're working with multiple
Yeah.
tools, right, then it becomes harder. You spend all your time trying to pull together all that information.
Yeah.
Just like look at the attribution and understand how it's working,
You know what's funny is
right?
what I see a lot is a lot of people have the data, but they don't have the first 4 or 5 things you mentioned. You know, they're looking at lots of data and analytics, but they don't mean anything because they don't know what questions to ask of that data. They don't have the first. They don't know how to be helpful. They're not trying to be helpful. They're not thinking about the human first. You know, so they're kind of missing all the soft skills, but they have all the hard data. They just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, 100%. You're just right. And it's because it's hard,
Yeah,
right? And people want to help, especially small business owners. The reason they went into a
that's
business
right.
is they want to assist, they want to do a good
Yeah, of
job,
course.
right? And that starts, like it always starts, with a mindset. You asked me in the briefing meeting, what's the key to growth? And one of the things that I
Mhm.
like to talk about is mindset. In fact, after this presentation, I'm going to do another presentation on
Oh,
mindset
nice.
internally at HubSpot, right? And mindset is important because you need to grow personally and professionally. And when you start a company, you need to understand what kind of company you're going to start.
Mhm.
And you have to understand why you're going to do this, right? What's your why? Because you know this as well as I do, Lee. It's hard to start a company.
Mhm.
I have a slide of a baby lifting a barbell. I go, is easier or harder to start a company in 2022? And it's a very good slide because I always get both answers. Some people say it's easier,
Mhm.
right? Some people say it's harder,
Yeah,
right? And the answer is it's both,
depends on
right?
perspective. Mhm.
Exactly. And it depends on how well thought out you have defined what you want to do.
Mhm.
I think about probably 2012, I started solving problems differently,
Yeah.
right? And how do you solve problems? What's your mental process when you're trying to solve problems?
Well, it's kind of different depending on the problem. I actually study this a lot, mental thinking, like mental modes, mental models. You know, there's the prisoner's dilemma, you know, when you talk about game theory and these kind of things. So I have different approaches that I kind of naturally go to depending on what the problem is. But to your point, though, the way I think about it is a company has to understand as they're starting out that there's a need in the market. So they have to really get a pulse for what the market needs. but then they have to bring a vision to that need. They can't just solve the need, because then they're just like the next person. They have to solve it in a unique way.
Awesome. I like that. In 2012, I started a new philosophy for problem solving that's pretty consistent over most problems. And that is, I start with the goals and work backwards. I was just doing this today with my friend Rachel. Rachel and I assist in building boot camps within HubSpot Academy.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, what is the end state? What do you want to do? And she's like, that's a good question. And I'm thinking, for anybody, if you don't know where you want to end up, how are you going to solve?
How are you going to get there?
Why did it take me to 2012 to figure that out? Right now, I tell everybody, okay, what is you want to accomplish? And it's the same thing for scale small business. Right?
I think people just lose sight of where they're going as they're grinding away each day.
Nicest people in the world. Right? There's no question they want to help themselves. They want to help their customers. They want to grow. All that stuff is true. Right? But unless you have a designed end state, start with the goals and work backwards, it's impossible to figure out just going along. Right? You don't know if you're ahead or behind. You don't have a plan or whatever is happening. Right? And my personal experience in B2B software is it takes 8 years to build a great company. 8 years. Right? In those 8 years, there's so many curveballs. There's so many issues. There's economic variations. There's global pandemics. There's wars. There's crashes in all kinds of different assets. It's like crazy. And that's just the way human life is in the modern world.
It's true.
Right? So you got to be prepared. You got to understand that it's going to be totally different than your expectation. You've got to realize that it's expectation that you're going to start with, this is where I want to be every year and in the long term, right? I have 10 questions on www.dantyre.com about questions I want to talk to somebody about before I either advise or invest in the company. Because it's not my company, right? Starting in 2014, I became an angel investor and have invested in 30 or so companies, primarily women and people of color. Because they're underserved in venture capital.
Sure.
I never thought that was fair. And I'm like, all right, so let's figure out how we can rebalance kind of thing. And it's been amazing. And I got some great portfolio companies you can see at dantyre.com. And I want them to understand this is why I'm doing it. And my goal is to help them insulate. And my goal is to explain to your listeners, if you don't have a very specific written kind of this is what I want to accomplish, it's very difficult for somebody to coach you, somebody to get you there, for you to know whether you're making progress towards that. But if you do, right, one of the things, the first thing I mentioned is mindset, have a good mindset. The second thing is a plan. And I can't tell you the number of small business owners. I'm like, okay, where's your plan? And they're like, what? I'm like, I want to know on a monthly basis, what's your revenue? How many customers you have, how many net new customers, how many customers you're going to retain, what your profitability is, and whether you're going to make money or lose money. And they're like, that's a good idea. And I'm like,
sounds like a business plan. Who would have thought?
A business plan today is 3
pages.
Right. And it's just.
And it's really answering those questions.
It is. I know. But if you don't have a monthly plan, an advisor can't come in and say, all right, we ahead or behind.
That's right.
What's the issue? Right. And I'm all about speed to getting where we want to go. So you always start with the goals and work backwards. And then you have an actual plan that says, all right, this is how we're going to get there. Right. And once you have the numbers, the thing about entrepreneurs is they're incredibly enthusiastic. Right. They just are positive, or they wouldn't be entrepreneurs.
That's right.
There's a few Debbie Downers there, but mostly they're like, yeah, I can beat the world. And they can. Right. But numbers don't lie. And I need to see that information. I need to see the progress that they're making so that if there's a problem, we can catch it quick. If they can't see it because they have an inside view, I want to make sure that they that an outside view and a advisor can bring it to their attention. And that's critically important for all of your listeners to understand. The third point that I want to bring up, every company is a technology company. I may have mentioned that before, but it used to be in the old days that people were like, nah, we're not going to lean into that. You have to now. There's no question. And it's not because I work for a technology company. I don't really care what technology you work on, but you have to master that process because it's the key to scale. And then the final thing is you can't forget customers. I do a lot of work for HubSpot for startups. And lots of people think, oh, I'm going to develop this app and people are just going to use it. I'm like, well, how are you going to sell it? And they're like, I don't have to sell it. People are just going to use it.
Who?
Right.
Who's going to use it? How?
Exactly. And so the process is you always sell to your friend and family, not give it to them. You sell it to them. You're like, no. I want
have
you
them
to
give you objections.
They're like, why? You're my brother-in-law. I'm like, I want you to pay for it because I need paid customers.
That's the first objection you have to overcome. He says, well, why do I have to pay for it? I'm your brother-in-law.
Yeah, it's because I need customers. That's a good enough answer for most people. Right. And I want to make sure I can take the order. I want to make sure that it's up and running because a free trial, this is the other thing I see, a free trial or a user is different than a paid subscriber. And if people aren't willing to drop their American Express or Visa card on it, then it may be a little bit different.
That's right.
Right. There's some business models and there's a variety of different approaches to that. Right. But I'm a big believer of tons of programs out there that teach you how to deliver the service. And that's important. You got to deliver quality services. You're out of business in 2022. But you also have to have a sales and marketing process or a schmarketing process, a flywheel process that help you generate your first either 5 customers or 50 customers or 500 customers.
So if we talk about processes inside of marketing specifically, when you say that, are you alluding to a content production and distribution process, or are you talking about something different?
There are all kinds of processes in any company. There's a new business development process. There is a customer retention process. There's a delivery process. There's a financial
onboarding
process. Yeah, all of those kind of things. Unless you're going to be a small company, stay all in one room with limited, you have to define that process. And it's going to change all the time.
That's right.
Right? As soon as you go to a second location. So all of those processes need to be managed, automated, and evaluated to make sure that you are properly supporting the customer. In the old days, right, people would call and complain. People don't call and complain anymore. They just ghost you. They're like, no, we moved to somebody else. Because in 2000, I think it was 15, the average company had 6 competitors, right? And they're all about the same. In 2022, the average company has 40 competitors. Right. And it's just too easy.
That's right.
Right. If somebody's not happy, they're just going to bolt. That's why client engagement is so important. That's why customer success should be one of the first hires that you have after the co-founders. Right. Because if you're bringing on customers and they're not sticking around, right, it's very, very hard to grow a business like that.
Most definitely. Yeah. And I think to that point too, like thinking about some businesses who, it's not necessarily that you have to have a particular process that doesn't exist in your company. It's about if your marketing that you're doing is working, it's about having a process that supports that marketing so that you can scale. Because that's what we're really talking about is how do you go from, 1 room, 2 rooms or to 10 rooms.
Maybe. Remember, if your goal is to just provide X amount of revenue for a certain period of time, a lifestyle company, that's perfectly okay. And what I've learned helping hundreds, thousands of companies, it's not my business model. You can do whatever you want. If your job is to make, if your goal is to make $150,000 with 5 customers and that's it and never grow, right? That's fine with me, right? Let's just build a plan to get you there. Let's build a plan to make sure you stay there. Let's make sure that those 5 customers are insanely happy. Right. And that gives you the flexibility and capability of accomplishing your goals. Right. It's not all about Dan Tyre. It's just about my 42-year experience of looking back and understanding that, number one, that every business is a people business.
That's super valuable. And I appreciate all your advice. Before we go, as we're wrapping up, any resources that you could send? I know you got the Academy and where could you send people to go to learn more?
So HubSpot offers a free CRM. Actually, all of our software starts at free. www.hubspot.com. Right. Number 2, HubSpot Academy. Right, is 400 certification classes, all online, all like you can stop and start whenever you like. I think there's 80 certifications, and the rest are lessons, all free. Right. And amazing. And what the Academy organization has done over the last 10 years is tremendous. And then just Google HubSpot free resources.
Yeah. And there's a ton of stuff.
There's 62 things that we can do, from personas to tools to download sheets to those kind of things. And we love doing it. Number one, when I walk through airports, people sometimes want to take selfies and things like that. They're like, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, why? They're like, I've never bought anything from you. I use you all the time. I'm like, don't be embarrassed. That's
Yeah,
by design.
that's right.
You ever recommend HubSpot? And they're like, yes, all
Yeah,
the time. I'm like, good.
there you go.
Right. That's how we
And
get
are
there.
you helping? Yes, you're
And
helping.
exactly. And that's the philosophy that was driven by the founders
I
that
love it.
is probably more applicable in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
especially to SMB and companies that are scaling, and super excited to be part of it.
That's awesome. And before we go, I got one more question for you to ask all my guests. If you could change an SMB's mind, a CEO, owner, founder, about one thing, what would it be? And it doesn't have to be necessarily marketing, sales related. It's just growth related.
It's the riches are in the niches. It's the hardest thing I have to do is to tell a entrepreneur you can sell to both agriculture and professional services, but pick one.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to because for all the right reasons. They're like, no, we can help both. I'm like, but one has higher NPS scores.
Mm-hmm.
One, you do better work. One, you like working with those people more. And they're like, yeah, but I don't want to give up that revenue. I'm like, you don't have to give up the revenue, but for new business development,
that's right.
you have to, the more you focus. I'm going to start telling the frog story. I like the frog YouTube story.
Oh, it's in, and right? it's so prevalent. There's these stories. There's probably 100,000 stories like that of people doing these niche things and talking about solo businesses. They're everywhere. It's amazing.
Yeah. So that would be my one.
I love it. I love it. Thanks for your time, and it's been great chatting with you. Thanks for all the advice. I'll be tagging you on LinkedIn whenever we distribute this out.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee. Thanks, Todd, for making the connection. Yes. Thanks for HubSpot for helping SMBs grow. And I'm at your service, right? People can connect with me on LinkedIn. They can connect with me on all levels of social media, and look forward to helping them scale their business.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, I really appreciate you tuning into this episode of Exploring Growth. I'm trying to get this in the hands of as many growing businesses as possible so they can take this practical wisdom and deploy it in their companies or with their teams. If you're getting some value out of this show and know someone who should listen as well, would you consider sharing it with them or leave a positive review on the platform in which you're listening or watching? YouTube audience, leave a comment below with something you liked or your perspective on what we discussed. I'm grateful for everyone that tunes in every week. Let's keep exploring.